Of all the world's hot spots, there's one that never seems to cool off. It's a smoldering, seething Middle East. I'll be back in a moment with the amazing facts about Arabs, Israelis, and inspiration. Hello, this is Joe Cruz and the Amazing Facts broadcast. Facts which affect you. Say, have you noticed how the terrible hatred between the Jews and Arabs keeps the Middle East in a seething, sizzling ferment all the time? Perhaps no two races on the face of the earth are so violent in their antagonism to each other. Other religious groups have fought and killed each other, such as the Hindus and Muslims in India, and also the Catholics and Protestants in Ireland. But no bitterness seems quite so deep and enduring as the withering hatred of these two people for each other. Now we're going to get a little background today on why this smoldering fuse box has never been successfully dampened or defused. It's very interesting, friends, that the only and oldest source of accurate information on this explosive piece of real estate is the Word of God. Over and over again, the book, the Bible, has proven to be the most amazing manuscript on record. Now just a word about the Arabs. As you'll remember, they're the descendants of Abraham's son Ishmael. Abraham had to send Ishmael and his mother Hagar away after Isaac was born, but he prayed that God would spare his life. In Genesis 16:11 and 12, God said to Abraham, "Thou shalt call his name Ishmael, and he will be a wild man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren." And in Genesis 17:29, God promises, "And I will make him a great nation." Now, concerning the Arabs, Dr. Thomas Newton says this: "The great empires around them have all in their turns fallen to ruin, while they have continued the same from the beginning." End of quotation. Now, these Arabs wander over the ruins of Nineveh, Babylon, Tyre, while not a single inhabitant of those cities remain. At one time, these Arabs, known as Saracens, made rapid conquest in the countries around them, and were indeed known as a great nation. Not only Babylon, but other Chaldean cities were to be in ruins. Not many years ago, skeptics were telling us that no such place as Ur of the Chaldees ever existed, and that the story of Abraham and Terah leaving the place was just folklore. But the dust of ages is a good historian, and now the archaeologists have unearthed the ancient city of Ur. They've located the foundations of that mighty city and tell us that the homes were luxurious two-story buildings with 13 or 14 rooms. Ur was really a very sophisticated city with education and great wealth. Now, God wanted Abraham to leave Ur because of the great wickedness in that city. Here, sun worship had been introduced from Babylon, and it became the very center of that satanic form of worship. You can still see the ziggurat where human sacrifice was offered to the moon goddess. They called her the Queen of Heaven. And Abraham no doubt watched the priests climb those very steps day after day with their screaming victims. It was a solid brick structure, but it's crumbled away so that not very much remains today. But now let's see what God says about the future of two great nations, the Edomites and the Israelites. When the twins Jacob and Esau were born to Isaac, God told him that each would become a great nation. So side by side they have grown to become powerful, and many, at least they grew from that moment. Now prophecy tells us that the land would become desolate, and that one of those nations, the descendants of Esau, or the Edomites, would perish from the earth, while the other, the Jews, and the descendants of Jacob, would remain a distinct living people scattered throughout the world. Now let's read these prophecies, friends. 700 years before Christ, the Edomites were a great nation. But in Obadiah 18, we are told this: "There shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for the Lord has spoken it." End of quotation. Now DeHaas says, "So far as is known, not an Edomite today is to be found in all the world." Now listen, friends, of the Israelite nation in Leviticus 26:33, we read this: "And I will scatter you among the heathen, and your land shall be desolate, and your cities waste." Now, how truly has this been fulfilled? No nation on earth today has Jewish population within it. Not so long ago, skeptics ridiculed the story of the Edomites. They insisted that if there had been Edomites at any time in this earth's history, you would surely find relics of them in their cities. No Christian was able to answer them. They had to accept the Bible by faith. There was no evidence that what the Bible said was true concerning the Edomites. Not even one city could be located. But today we know that the Bible record is true, for at least 3,000 palaces, dwellings, and temples have been unearthed. Now let me tell you how the Edomite ruins were discovered. While excavating Nineveh, one tablet was found, and on this the king of Nineveh boasted that he had captured a certain city of the Edomites. So the British Archaeological Society in 1812 sent a Swiss explorer in to try to find that city. This Swiss mountaineer befriended some Arabs. One of them told him that through that narrow crevice and that mountain over there he would find some wonderful ruins. The Arab would not go because he was terrified. But the Swiss, disguised as an Arab, riding his little donkey and leading a goat supposedly for an offering on Mount Hor, made his way through the narrow crevice 1 mile in the mountain wall. Thus was discovered the wonderful city of Petra, the stronghold of the Edomites in the far distant past. This is what it says in Obadiah 4. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down. And sure enough, a natural fortress. This was the only city that Alexander the Great did not conquer. As you enter this enclosure, the first thing you see is the beautiful temple carved out of the solid rock, which varies in color from rose to yellow to purple. All around the enclosure are pillars left from that magnificent city, which was entirely carved out of the solid mountainside. Those great edifices were surely built like eagles' nests, just like God said. In Isaiah 34:11 we read, He shall stretch out upon it the stones of emptiness. And in Jeremiah 49:13 it says, All the cities thereof shall be perpetual wastes. Now some have been wondering how people could live in such a wilderness. But just remember that it was not a wilderness back in the days of the Edomites, for there had to be about 6 million people in that city at one time just to do the work that was required in erecting such a city. But God said that the place would come under a curse and become a desolation. It is surely true, friends. Stones of emptiness could not better describe those ruins. In Obadiah 1:3 and 4 we read, Thus saith the Lord God concerning Edom, Thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rocks, whose habitation is on high, thence will I bring thee down. Petra was their most important city, known in the Bible as Selah, meaning rock. Petra is the Greek name for rock, or Petra. And these great palaces were carved out of the solid rock all around the small valley. The only entrance to the city was through the crack in the rocks. Great cliffs towering up anywhere from 200 to 1,200 feet in height. So well protected, my friends, how and why did those Edomites become extinct? Just because they'd been so wicked that God foretold this calamity would befall them. Jesus said, while here on the earth, Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. Now listen, there were no reporters there to take down the words of Jesus, no daily papers to print his sermons. God has preserved his word through 20 centuries, and it has not weakened it or lessened its power. Translated into over 1,000 languages, spoken by over 15 million men and women. No other book has been so generally read and so greatly loved and so widely distributed, so certain of its results and so powerful in its influence. If the Bible is a forgery, friends, could it accomplish what it does wherever it goes? A lying forgery has no power to transform human lives into the likeness of the divine. Lying, lustful, murdering idolaters cannot be changed by the millions into honest, peaceable, virtuous men by telling them a great lie. Among all races, it exercises its astonishing power. In all languages, it's glorified. It is taken to savage cannibal islands, and it converts headhunters into civilized nations, transforming barbarians into peaceful, law-abiding citizens. About 40 men in different lands and languages wrote 66 books over a period of 1,500 years in order to give us our Bible. Collusion and conspiracy were absolutely impossible. One writer was a leader of Israel, one an exile in Babylon, another a herdsman, one a cupbearer, another a shepherd boy who became a king. Some were rulers, others subjects, some rich, others poor, some educated, and others were untaught. But their writings all agree in every particular. They wrote in Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, and Arabic on every subject: history, biography, poetry, speeches, proverbs, predictions, parables, romances, tragedies. The Bible must be of superhuman origin to have been produced in this way. The Bible is the only book that has never been outdated or superseded. Some say that the Bible is an old book, out of date, and that it was good for the Dark Ages, but there's some good history in it, but that it's not intended for the present time. Well, you might as well say that the sun, which has shone so long, is now so old that it's out of date. Because we have electricity, there's no need to put any windows in our houses today. That is surely a rather silly idea, friends, but that's what some people would say, but no more so than to say that the Bible is outmoded. There are a few things in the Bible that I don't understand, but I believe the Bible just the same. I can't possibly understand the light years they talk about in astronomy, but the light still travels 186,000 miles per second. Can you explain how the same kind of food turns into flesh, hair, fingernails, feathers, hoofs, according to who eats it? One man insisted that he never believed anything that he couldn't see. Now, I'd like to ask him this question. Have you ever seen your brain? Or maybe he hasn't got one. Why is it that we're so slow to trust God? Why do we hesitate to believe and take God at His word with all the positive proof we have? A few years ago at a presidential cabinet meeting, the president and his advisors were discussing a current world crisis. One of the presidential advisors, during a moment of interlude between their sessions, and this was a man who was a devout Christian who had been a counselor to two presidents, he was telling the group informally that he believed the Bible had the answers to the world's dilemma. He told them what he believed the outcome would be on the basis of Bible prophecy. He said he believed that the second coming of Jesus was the next great event in this world's history, and that the church had as its great mission the taking of this message to the world. One wealthy and powerful cabinet member said to him, "If we could only believe what you say, we could pour our millions into your program and get this damnable business over with." And yes, friends, if we could only believe, that's exactly what could be done. The end would come quickly, and we'd see the end of human suffering and the introduction of God's great everlasting kingdom that shall have no end. Well, these prophecies have been really outstanding, friends, and impressive. I hope you will write for the material I've shared today, because it goes deeper into these prophecies and predictions about ancient cities and kingdoms. Our broadcast today is broadcast number 445, and it's free for the asking. By the way, also be sure to give the call letters of the station you're listening to when you write. And now, this is Joe Cruz saying goodbye for today.